Hi, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Game Industry Insight, a look behind the scenes at game development. And be sure to subscribe and you can pitch future video topics. Oh boy, everybody, for today's Industry Insight, we got a very interesting topic. So if you missed the news, what happened was Kotaku got into a little bit of a tussle, not sure what would be the right term here, when they did a piece about Horizon Zero Dawn and a documentary that was talking about the tech and the design tricks that were used to bring that game to life. Apparently, the author of the post didn't talk about like the exact specifics of the tools that were used, and few developers were like making fun of him online. And then Polygon jumped on it with a pretty much a very big fluff piece. And it certainly caused, I guess, a minor stir in the great annals of the internet. But it does bring up a very interesting topic that I want to talk about, and that is the disconnect between journalists and designers. The video game industry is very unique in this regard compared to the other markets. Because there is no standardized method or standardized teaching, basically anyone, everybody can talk about video games. Just like how, as long as you can understand basic programming and art, or have a team by your side, you can put together a video game. Again, there is no such thing as a game design license that you need to start making games. But what that has done is created this disconnect between what it means to talk about video games and what it means to review them. And this is something that I've definitely been finding more and more of as I've been doing more podcasts and developer interviews, either live or recorded on Game Wisdom. One thing that I've found is that a lot of developers love talking about game design. One of the things that I've heard frequently from our guests is that whenever they talk to other members of the press or game journalism, they don't really talk about design. They talk more about the PR side of things. And there's definitely room for discussing game design and, again, the inner workings or the back end of what it takes to make video games, as evident by the fact that I'm sure there are people watching this video right now. But when it comes to game journalism as a whole, a lot of it is not focused on that. It's done more in the tabloid style. You see this with many, many major game sites who I don't feel like naming or earning their ire just yet, anyway. But this disconnect is very interesting because typically when we look at the journalistic or the media side of an industry versus the professional or working side, there are usually similarities between the two. For instance, someone who is reviewing cars or understands or does like mechanic work, if you're working for a magazine or a site that covers that, chances are you have done some of that in the past. When it comes to any kind of sport, usually the people who cover, the journalists, are either those who have been following it for a very long time, or could be former players, coaches. Usually they have some involvement in the industry before they make the leap over to the journalistic side. But when it comes to video games, because of how open it is, as long as you have a YouTube channel and a microphone, you can basically get into game journalism these days. And there has been quite a interesting discussion or conversation that's been had about kind of the failings of game journalism. The fact that there aren't more posts, videos, and pieces that talk about the design or the inner workings of game development. One thing that I find that is especially lacking, that I was just talking to someone outside the industry about today, is the fact that there aren't enough discussions being had about the dark side of being in the game industry. I'm talking about the challenges of what it takes to make a video game. The fact that it is a huge gamble whenever you're putting a game out there, and the fact that even if you do everything right, that still doesn't guarantee success. Most video game sites will only cover the hit makers. Again, your Five Nights at Freddy's, Minecraft, Undertale, and the like. But very rarely do we see pieces that talk about just what it takes to make games. When we did our podcast with Jay Burkett of Gray Alien Games, that was a really fascinating discussion about just what it means to work in the game industry. And that's kind of where I think these issues come into play. A lot of the people who cover video games don't necessarily work or deal with members of the industry. They deal with members of the press, that's for sure. But it's very rare to see a game design piece on a major site like IGN, GameSpot, Giant Bomb, and the like. They'll cover video games and they'll talk to developers, but when it comes to actually talking about the work that went into the video game or the processes and mechanics that define game design, a lot of that stuff is barely mentioned. There are a few big examples, such as I think there's the No Clip documentary series, Extra Credits, I think it's Errant Signal, something like that. And I like to say that I would be a part of that group as well. But this does, again, raise those concerns about just what does it mean to cover video games professionally. Again, a lot of people view it as same way they view video games, as, this movie star-like industry. But for a lot of people who make video games, they don't see themselves as, movie stars or celebrities. They don't expect to make a Game of the Year game and then be hounded by the paparazzi. But for people this is one of those very weird disconnects that kind of irks me. That it seems these days that the people who cover video games are more famous than the people actually making them. And as perfect case as an example, we can look at the rise of the YouTuber industry. Again, Markiplier, Northern Lion, Bear Taffy, PewDiePie, and I'm sure countless others. That probably more people who play video games know who they are than they know the people who actually design the games. And again, I'm not just talking about the major studios like Firaxis, From Software, etc., but the actual designers. And this does raise a question that I posed a few weeks ago that I want to bring up here. Do you think there should be some kind of qualification for discussing or covering video games? And that is definitely a Pandora's box of a topic to open. Because right now, when people think of game journalism, they can think of everything from insightful posts to people reacting to trailers to someone ranting and raving about a video game for 20 to 30 minutes. And this is one of the reasons why game journalism, at least from a professional standpoint, has unfortunately taken a really big hit. Because everyone wants to do it, it means that it's very hard to adhere to a standard, and more importantly, in order to profit or make a living off of it. When I started writing in 2007, there was still some semblance of being paid to write about games. But it seems that almost every one of those jobs has dried up. And now there's the greater focus on videos. But the question still remains, should there be some way to qualify yourself when it comes to covering video games? I would like to say there is, or I would like to say there should be. And again, like the stuff that we do on Game Wisdom, I want to see more people do. I want to see more people having these conversations about game development and the work that goes into it. Because there really aren't enough out there, or enough reputable sources, I should say. Again, you type in game design in on Google, and I'm sure you're going to get 20, 30 completely different articles about it. Now, getting back to the originator of this industry insight, the Kaku Post, I hate to say it, but I think I do want to side with the developers on it. The author of the post didn't even mention the technique that was being used, and I actually looked this up before. It's a viewing frustum culling, which is the idea that the camera will basically only render the environment that's being shown within that field, and then everything else basically is removed, or it's not being rendered anymore, and that is to cut down on processing power or cut down the amount of stuff that needs to be rendered at any given time. And it is pretty much a requirement for any massive game like Horizon Zero Dawn, Grand Theft Auto, Saints Row, Just Cause, and the like. But that's kind of the issue that I had with that piece, is that it's great that the author was interested and wanted to share this, but it's kind of a non-article by the fact that there's no technical information for someone who wants to know about it. Just saying that the camera only renders what's on frame, that's great, but it would be great to tell people what it's called and why this is being used. Because if you want to teach people about game design, then it should be up to the journalist to provide that information. One of my favorite series back when I used to get PC Gamer was their monthly columns from experts in the simulator genre, RPGs, strategy games, and the like, that talked more about the inner workings of these systems or the inner workings of these genres. And I would like to say that I'm kind of following in those footsteps, but again, that's easily for another time. To wrap up today's industry insight, I do think that game journalists should be adhered to some standard. And there should be more discussions about, again, what goes into making video games beyond just the hit makers. There should be more posts and articles about just what it takes to make video games. And from that Kotaku piece, there are people who are consumers who want to know about game development. They want to know more about what goes into it. Much like someone who's a car enthusiast may want to know about different engines or transmissions and the like. But I think it's up to the game journalism or game journalists to step things up on that front. Because like I said, this is an industry where the people who make the games, they don't have the time to write about all that much. You're not going to see someone who spends a 9-to-5 job designing video games and then come home and then write 5 different game design pieces for major sites over the night. But I think with that said, we're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe and be able to pitch future topics. And check back daily for more great discussions here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Till tomorrow, have a great night. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.